Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Cotter. I am the executive director for Wicked Queer, Boston's LGBTQ plus film festival. I'm joined with Wendy Hill Tout, who's the writer and producer of Bloodthirsty, Lauren Beatty, and Catherine King So, who are our lovely um, actors Gray and Charlie, who also are in Bloodthirsty. Welcome, everyone. um,
Thank you
and
for
thanks for
having us.
joining us. I know it's kind of early in the morning, so we do appreciate you spending some time with us. I guess to sort of like kick it off, maybe first question for Wendy. Wendy, how did this come about? I mean, this is such an amazing sort of film. I've never seen sort of like a werewolf tale, and especially like a lesbian werewolf tale. So tell me a little bit about how this sort of came about.
Um, I started this with my daughter Lowell. We co-wrote the script, and she's a singer-songwriter. So for her, it was really autobiographical, I think, because she was not that she's a werewolf, but she's she was writing her second album and just going through a lot of struggling with it because there was so much pressure because her first one had been quite critically accepted. It was written up in Rolling Stone magazine and all these things. So I think it came from that and it was about a singer-songwriter who went to work with this famous music producer in his mansion in the woods. And I think from when we started talking about like having like almost, I want to call it, maybe it's the wrong way to put it, but a real gay relationship. In other words, it's not the film. It's just there as if it was perfectly natural and the most natural thing in the world. It doesn't have to be explained. It's just there. And I think Lowell writes a lot of political pop songs and I think queer positive pop songs as well. So it was kind of a natural. I guess it just was natural, like that's what it became as a queer lesbian movie.
I mean, it really, I mean, one of the things that really sort of like attracted us to it is that sort of naturalness of the relationship. And it's sort of, I mean, there's always a place for sort of coming out stories and things like that. But I feel like we're always craving being sort of like post coming out, like storytelling and stories that sort of center that have representation that aren't, it's not a big drama, it's not issue, it's just sort of it's natural, like we're all living. And I feel like you really kind of like um sort of capture that in the film. What led you to the sort of werewolf mythology? So because I mean
You
that's
know,
like kind of like the ultimate coming out as well.
I know. Ironically, I mean, it's weird. Lowell and I struggled for a couple of years with the script, and it was a ghost story. That's the weird thing. It still had the singer-songwriter going to work with
Hmm.
this producer, famous music producer, but it was a ghost story. And I don't know, we just struggled. We couldn't get there. We kept postponing the film because we didn't have a script yet. And um, I don't know, like we were working also with David Bond, who's was our script supervisor, and he's just a master genre person. And I don't know, we just one day we're talking about werewolves, like because Lowell, her name is actually in French means wolf cub. So this is always wolves have always been big, and even in the ghost story, wolves were there. We had this wolf who was very almost symbolic and was kind of tied to Greta and her whole story. And so the wolves were already there, but then they became werewolves. So that was the weird thing. And once it happened, the script just fell together because I think what's neat about a werewolf, well, in this case, Gray was half human and half werewolf. And what a beautiful character for conflict in themselves about what they're becoming. But also it's so fit this story of an artist who's trying to figure out who they are and what they want to say as an artist. So as the artist is sort of becoming, I guess, who they really are too, and really finding their art and truth. So is the werewolf. So as soon as we made that decision, everything came together.
Nice. I mean, that also, I mean, is sort of part of it is this sort of this transformation, but you have this sort of the storyline of the sort of the recording of the sophomore album and the sort of like you kind of mentioned sort of the pop stardom at the beginning with the photo shoot and things like that, and the sort of reaction of how like almost toxic that is, and sort of this escaping to the mansion in the woods to sort of like navigate what's next. Maybe Lauren, a question for you: how did you sort
Yeah.
of approach the role of Gray? Because I mean, you are really amazing, and I know that you've worked with Amelia before.
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
like I think I mean, you sell the film, so I mean, so tell
Well,
me.
thank God. That's great to hear. No, I think that yeah, I think it was interesting, and I kind of realized this. We had a press day for this film 2 days ago, and so we were doing a bunch of interviews in a row, and it was funny because as the more I was answering these questions, I was kind of like realizing things for myself that I didn't even really realize while shooting the film. But when I look back on the experience, it's really it's really, I guess maybe not funny, but like interesting to me to see the parallels between actually like myself and then Gray, because this was my sophomore feature film. Like this was my second time, starring in a feature film in my life. And, obviously like I'm expected to carry the film. There's a lot of pressure with, all the music. There wasn't a lot of prep time. So I'm kind of just being like thrown into this and just praying to God that I can pull it off and that it's going to work out. And, you have imposter syndrome that comes up, all of these different things. So like I was battling through that as Gray was battling with kind of those same themes through the movie. So it was pretty interesting. So I think a lot of it, I didn't even realize came from like a pretty real place while I was filming. So I thought that was a pretty interesting realization.
Yeah, I mean the story itself is very fantastical, but I mean there is a certain authenticity to it, which I think is really kind of refreshing, and I think that's what sort of like kind of grounds the film and also attracts us as the viewer. Maybe Catherine, this question for you: like, how did you bring sort of yourself into the role of Charlie?
Yeah. First off, I just want to say I just noticed your Black Sunday shirt. I'm a huge Mario Bava fan, so yes, I see you. Yeah, I think it was this cool thing where I read the script for the first time and I was like, oh, Charlie's like kind of a badass. And there was just like all of these things that I immediately was like, oh, this would be so much fun to play. Or like there's all these things I identify with her. And so yeah, I think like right from the beginning, I think the way like Lauren and I both approached the relationship was in a very grounded way. And kind of, as you were saying, it's like the movie is not really about coming out, or like it's not like stamped in that way. And so I think we both just brought the fact that we are like IRL queer people to this relationship, and then like played the actual motivation and what was going on in the scenes and what was going on in the movie. And so I think from the beginning, we both had like a very sort of similar image of like what that relationship looked like, or like what that dynamic looked like, versus like trying to project like how to be queer. Like, do you know what I mean? Like we weren't like playing gay because like we are. So that's kind of like
we're inherently gay. So
yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was just something that like I think when you're a queer artist, whether it's in your writing, your producing, your acting, whatever, it just sort of like inherently comes, and that's not a thing that you really have to push, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, this was actually
is that important
like
to
a werewolf
guys?
coming out story.
Is that important to you guys, being queer, that you guys are then representing queer in the films? Because I feel like a lot of times it's like you get straight people playing the parts, like, and it's like, it's really nice when you can not just relate to the characters, but in real life that they represent that.
More than important, I would be like, it's our life's work.
It's literally my life's work, and I think Kat's too. So
love it.
For me, it was such a dream to, first of all, just be approached to audition for this part, and knowing that she's like the lead and she's queer, and just knowing that like Wendy and the whole team actually cared about casting queer actors in queer roles. That was like huge for me. And then getting to act alongside Kat was amazing, because I know we both feel the same way about representation and, you know, seeing ourselves on screen and telling like authentic queer stories. And just, yeah, again, the fact that this relationship is just there, you know, it's not, you know, a lot of times queer characters are used as like a trope, or they're kind of peppered in to, you know, make plots more, you know, the main plot more interesting. But like, this is just there in the way that like a straight couple would have been. So
which is what I think we're all kind of craving too. And the sort of the fact that you are both queer, like you can tell when straight actors are playing queer because it's acting. And I feel like there was such an ease between the connection between you two. There was great chemistry between the two of you on screen. I don't want to go on about the sex scene, because the sex scene was really hot. But
thank you.
Thanks, John.
Hey, you're welcome.
Second that.
So let's go on. Yeah.
Thanks, Katie.
But I don't want to necessarily go on that, because that's such a that's also like the interviewer trope, and I don't want to go down there. But I do want to note that. But I also think the sort of the times in your just sort of your relation on screen, there was a chemistry that was super believable, that you were sort of a couple too, which was kind of nice, which I feel like a lot of straight actors, they don't have that sort of ease on screen because they are acting. And I feel like it's the same thing if like queer actors were playing straight. There's that sort of there's that disconnect that isn't quite there. It's not as naturalistic. And I feel like the letting that sort of piece go there is a sort of like an ease with the craft as well, because you actually get to sort of embody the full character.
Kat and I we had an interview the other day, and it was for the Out on Film Festival. And the guys who run that, they're married, and they were telling us that at the end of the film, they just looked at each other and they were like, I think they're actually gay. And then
they're like, we Googled
they
you.
like Googled us and realized we were, and Kat and I were just like, that is the best compliment we have ever gotten. that you knew.
That's awesome.
You know?
Yeah. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think like where we're at now in terms of like representation and politics is like sort of we're at this like pivotal moment of finally being able to like tell stories and be seen in stories. And so it is very exciting. I think both of us have seen like a big shift in our careers from even like a few years ago, where now we get to play like these amazing characters that have like the fact that they're queer going on, but also other stuff. And so, yeah, it is like just this like extra like cherry on top, I think, aside from doing like an awesome horror movie, to be able to like, you know, play something authentically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of the strength of this movie. And I have to say, this is I'm not supposed to declare favorites, but this is definitely a fave of the sort of the program, like this year's programming, because I mean, one, I love horror films, obviously, but I think that like it sort of is going to be like a really kind of timeless, because again, the look of the film, it's very modern, but at the same time it could be like the 70s. It could be like, without like, you know, kind of like zeroing in on like fashion and things like that, but it could like, it has a sort of like timelessness with the sort of the way that the film is sort of like presented and constructed, and even shot to that sort of like it reminded me a lot of like sort of the psychotronic films of the 70s, like Mario Bava and stuff like that. It had that sort of like almost darkness in it that sort of like kind of pervades. It kind of like gives this sort of eerie creepiness.
Yeah, that's a nice thing about when you're like isolated in a cabin in the woods too. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it becomes very timeless, and it's like removed a little bit from society.
Yeah, you feel kind of like trapped in time.
So Wendy, was a lot of the sort of the like, because that house is amazing that you found, like, where did you find that location, and was that sort of like pivotal to the story, or was it like sort of like found after the story was written?
It was definitely found afterwards. We went location scouting. We saw a lot of houses. We actually shot this film in Edmonton, and so we had to go. We'd found sort of a perfect house in Calgary, but we got some funding, so we went up to shoot in Edmonton. And so we had to really, well, I guess it was for us finding something equivalent to this really strange place we'd found, which was some kind of count who came out here in the middle of nowhere in ranch country and built this house. So anyway, we looked at so many houses and didn't find what we wanted. And then we found that one, and it is really quirky. The guy's a collector. Like we had to move so much stuff out of the way, but like he has all this weird stuff. And then those weird walls, cut sort of in strange ways, and like the colors and it was an art department's dream because I think when you do a relatively low budget film, you have to kind of use what you find. And what was great for us is like a lot of it was there. Obviously the art department made changes. So I think the house becomes almost like a character in the film.
Definitely.
There was like a lot of cool and weird and antique stuff in that house, and it was kind of fun because like depending on where we were shooting, they would like move some of like these collector items into other rooms, so like we'd be like getting our hair and makeup done surrounded by like
we were in a
funniest
straight up, it was a boudoir. Like it was the guy who owns the house's bedroom, which is the entire top floor, like this sprawling master bedroom. There was like a red silk rotating bed,
circular,
like bondage stuff everywhere. It was you were everything happened inside that house. So like hair and makeup, our holding rooms were in there, we ate in there, so you're like constantly just in that environment.
Really set the tone.
It really set the tone. Yeah. Let's just say that. Yeah.
So the creepiness came from this.
Yeah. It was definitely very fantastical and like strange. Yeah. There was just that air about it the whole time. So like you could never get out of that, which was actually kind of a dream as an actor. It's like just being immersed in that environment.
And we were also staying, like our hotel was sort of like a bit removed from the city, and we were shooting like in the dead of winter. And so we kind of had a real life experience of being like a bit isolated from, we all flew out for the movie and we shot in Edmonton. So this experience of really just being like, we are focused on this movie and like what's happening. And there was like no like, distractions from friends in the city and everything.
Yeah.
But we also got so close, I think, to everyone on the crew and like made amazing, like lifelong friends with people on this movie, because we were just like this great unit, all like focused on making art together, which is like the best thing that you can ever have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. I mean, you can kind of tell that the cast was very like tight knit too. Was the music studio part of the house too? The recording studio? Or was that an extra?
No, it was separate. But it was an amazing place, and it was in Edmonton. Edmonton's a real it's always been a music center. Kind of jazz, like just all kinds of interesting artists there. And so anyway, we found this, it was a real studio called, ironically, Wolf Willow Studios.
No.
Yeah.
That was one of our challenges, like when we looked at sets because we wanted to record in a real recording studio, which really did help. And they were amazing. Like they helped us with everything there. And it just had the feel, you believed it could be in that house. That's what, there were a lot of magical things that came together on this film, and that was one of them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really kind of seamless too. So this kind of leads me into my sort of question about the music, because the music is such a big part of the film, with Gray going up to record her sophomore album, and the sort of the beginning of that sort of recording being, obviously the Gray and Vaughn trying to find their sort of balance in the studio as well was really kind of a really interesting. It reminded me a little bit of the Phantom of the Paradise in many ways, which is, I don't know if that is even a connection, but it kind of had the weird, like, as far as like recording studio sort of films, and had a sort of similar kind of vibe to me with that. Tell me a little bit about the sort of shooting the recording sessions. Lauren, I know that you performed all the music, yes?
Yes, yeah.
which is kind of amazing too, because it's so good. It's so good.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean,
she learned piano for this.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
well,
amazing.
I mean, yeah, I had to learn, you know, all the parts that you actually see Gray playing. I had to learn to play. So, yeah,
No
I
big
think
deal.
I had.
Just learn piano.
Well, I mean,
Like a
luckily,
week.
I could do.
I mean, luckily, I'm musical myself, and like my dad's a musician, so I grew up with like music around me and like in my house constantly. So luckily, like I can pick things up pretty easily. Like I have a good ear, so thank God I was able to do that. I think it was 5 days I had until I had to leave to shoot. So and I actually got to sit down with Lowell once or twice in those 5 days because she was in Toronto at that time, which was super lucky. So I got to do a couple sessions with her and then a few with like a piano teacher. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was honestly such an honor to sing those songs. I think, you know, when I first got sent them for the auditions, I was just completely floored by the music, and I could just see the film already. Like hearing those songs, you get the atmosphere and you get the vibe, and I was so excited at the potential to be able to sing these songs for the film. And when we got there, the first week was the recording studio. So all of the recording studio scenes that you see, the transformation scene, those were all within like the first like 3 days.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a few other piano scenes in the film that aren't in the studio. So the production actually was kind enough to rent me a keyboard to keep in my hotel room. So after I would get back from like shooting, I would just be like practicing on the keyboard, keeping my neighbors up. Surprised I didn't get any complaints, but yeah, it was so amazing. Like I feel like I felt those songs in my soul when I was singing them, and I mean, hopefully that came across in my audition. I mean, it must have, I guess, because I felt such a deep connection to her lyrics and the songs. Yeah.
The soundtrack is amazing, like
Yeah.
as we were talking about before.
Yeah, and like for the audience out there, soundtrack will be released soon. There's going to be an EP that's coming soon, which is kind of great. So Wendy, were the songs written before the script or during, or how did the sort of the music and the script sort of kind of come together? Oh, Wendy, you're muted.
You're on mute, Wendy.
Wendy, you're muted.
The most important thing, I think, for us was the progression of Gray as a character in the film. And the hard part is you had to have it believable, A, that she was a successful singer, songwriter, and B, that her music changed and that she changed during that film. And you had to show it through the music. And I think if anything could have killed the film, it would be not succeeding in that.
Mm.
So much of it is about, you know, has this plot of this singer-songwriter finding really their voice. And so Lowell's my daughter, of course, who co-wrote it with me. She wrote all this, you know, most of the songs. And so we worked on the progression a lot as we were writing the script, because that was so important to the script. So yeah, we worked. It was unusual. We didn't write the songs after the script. We wrote them as we went, and they changed because, for example, when we changed the ending, we had to change the song. So,
Well, what was the original?
well, I would be giving away the movie if I said it, I think.
We can do a little we can do a little spoilers because this is going to get at the end.
Well, I can probably tell you. Anyway, it was but I think even Bloodthirsty became it was such a perfect song because
yes,
it was about being a werewolf and her going from being a vegan to a meat eater, but also it was about her art, like those lines, everyone wants a piece and stuff, you know, and about the pressures on an artist and how everyone wants something from them, whether it's their manager or her fans or whatever. So to me, it was just, I don't know, Lowell just encapsulated that. And she wrote that with two other songwriters too, I should say. But and then I've always thought Greta's song, Loving You to Death, is really a haunting song too, really beautiful. Yeah. And when we first auditioned, Lauren, she did two auditions for us, but the first time Lola and I went, oh, she's Gray. So I thought that was Lowell said that too, because
I remember you telling me that, and I was like, Yeah, so honored to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is such a synergy like between the cast and the sort of the material as well, because it like I said, Lauren, you as Gray really kind of sell the film, and it does seem so authentic, which is kind of amazing in such a fantastical sort of story.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
How was the werewolf transformation? Because I mean
Oh,
for
yeah.
as a fan of sort of werewolf films, that's what you sort of are looking for, is that sort of that moment of the transformation. It's like the money shot, I guess, would be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was such a crazy experience. I mean, like I said, we did it, I think it was on day 3 of the shoot. So and I didn't, the only werewolf film I've seen is American Werewolf in London.
Hmm.
I don't have much exposure to the werewolf genre, and I kind of wanted to keep it that way. Like I wanted to go into this, and like you said, like I kind of had the idea, like I wanted this to be really naturalistic and very authentic, because the story is super rooted in these characters, and it's very character driven. Um, so I needed to really stay in that authenticity, and honestly just let whatever was going to happen naturally. Um, Amelia and I kind of worked with some physicalities and stuff, but again, like we didn't have too much time to get so far into it.
Mhm.
But I almost liked that because, you know, I had these kind of jumping off points that me and Amelia had talked about. Like she has this trigger with her jaw, which you probably notice a few times in the film. When she's getting angry or worked up, she kind of clenches her jaw and does this kind of thing, trying to repress what's coming up. And you know, just picturing how your body would feel, your hands would be heavier because your talons are coming through your fingers, and just that kind of physicality. But then essentially it was kind of like a one shot thing. And once you're in that practical makeup and you actually see the physical manifestation of this beast that's inside of you, that was so helpful for me as an actor to really get into it. And you know, it was kind of like seeing that primal thing inside of me actually coming to the surface, because that makeup, it's just accentuating your own features. You know, you're not, you look in the mirror and you still recognize yourself, but you're this monster. So that was really fun to play with. And just, you know, as soon as we started rolling and I'm trapped in that sound booth and the lights are flashing and Greta's song is playing, which was like so emotional,
Mm.
I just kind of like let go, and it was super cathartic. If I'm being honest, it was really cathartic to just like unleash and like let out that kind of feral beast inside of me as a person too. So um yeah, super fun.
I mean, it felt cathartic for us as viewers too. I mean, you sort of
Awesome. Yeah.
got that sort of sense in the booth, that there's sort of like almost like caged rage, and
Yeah.
you got that sort of like, and I love the sort of the use of the lighting, the kind of like
Mhm.
strobe effect when it starts was
Yeah,
really kind of effective to sort of like signal that sort of transformation sort of happening.
for sure.
It was
Yeah.
really well done. I mean, really well done.
And it
So
was so cool. They did like all of it with practical effects. Like
mhm.
the makeup and the prosthetics and everything was just brilliant. And I think that's also kind of like this cool authenticity to have in a horror film too, when like so much is being done like in post
Mhm.
these days, to have like we're like
Mhm.
eating lunch and I turn around and Lauren's there and like full like werewolf get up with like nails.
just like eating a cheese string.
Like getting contact in. Yeah.
You know, I think that was really interesting for Greg too, because who played Vaughn, of course, the music producer, because he got to do, you know, not to, I guess, give away, but anyway, he got to do the makeup thing too.
Yeah.
And it was really neat for him because he starred in Bitten, the series, and it was all visual effects. It never happened on set.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I love.
he loved it.
I
Yeah,
love
he lived for being a werewolf.
He was like he was his true self in that makeup, I think.
You can kind of tell though, that's the thing. Is like again, he was really authentic too as a sort of like older werewolf with a mansion.
Yeah, living his dream life.
He was creepy. He was
Living his best
like
life.
from the beginning. You're like, something's not right.
Right, something's amiss. He's eccentric.
Yeah, eccentric.
Greg is so funny because he's sort of like almost like the villain of like Canadian film. Like he's been cast in so many TV shows and movies as like the bad guy. But he's like such a lovable person in real life who's like this mad, like it's amazing. Yeah.
He's like such a jokester. So it'd be funny, like we'd be joking around in between takes and we'd both just be in like werewolf makeup, just like like cracking jokes and like making each other laugh. And then it's just like the camera's rolling, we're like just like back to being but he could just drop in like that. Like he's so talented.
Yeah, the cast had such a great synergy, which again makes the sort of film very authentic and kind of magical too. So Wendy, because we kind of touched upon it with the werewolf, what was the sort of the motivation for the sort of vegan sort of veganism of Gray turning into this werewolf? I as a vegetarian and a sort of a lifelong vegetarian kind of really appreciated that, and it made that sort of drinking the blood from the steak scene. I was just like, oh,
that was great.
It was so good.
That's a lot of people's favorite moment. We've had a lot of comments on that.
It's weird. It made me think about my own sort of journey as a vegetarian in many ways. But what was the sort of the choice to kind of put that in?
Well, I think it just put the envelope because, like, if you on the scale of things, like as she progresses, she starts as a vegan and then, drinks the blood eventually, and then, kills the rabbit or whatever. So there's this progression and ending up like, a werewolf eats human beings, right? So to me, like that was such a great character thing because you really see the change that mirrors the change of her in the film.
And Lauren, how is it to shoot the killing of the rabbit, and also like there was a amazing scene where you're after you went outside in the freezing cold in your little shorty pajamas, and then you come back in and you take the shower, and the look on your face is just sure, it's like ecstatic. It's like it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love doing gory stuff. In Amelia's first film that I was in, that we shot a year prior, it was another, middle of the woods, isolated cabin, I'm covered in blood type of film. And horror to me is my favorite genre to act in because, you get to play with these kind of fantastical elements and do things that you would, maybe never do in real life. So I always have so much fun with it. I just love kind of, it's kind of just an escape from reality too. You can just abandon everything and put yourself into this like crazy world where you just fucking ate a rabbit, it's like, and you loved it and you're like in the woods. And I think for me too, it's like picturing the visuals of that and like how impactful that is. And I can almost just like see what it's going to look like as I'm doing it. And I always have so much fun with that stuff. I like to creep people out. I think like even as a kid, I never wanted to trick or treat. I would stay home and I would wear a scream mask and chase kids with a shovel. Like that was my ideal Halloween night. So I think it all, story checks out.
That's amazing. And let's hang out.
Deal.
I also really love just sort of in the sort of story. It's like at the beginning, as they're going to the mansion, they run over the rabbit, and they're like, "Was it cute?" Which I thought was
we like that whole day. We were like just doing so much improv and so much banter. Like we probably took it a little too far into comedy, and they were like, "No, this is still a horror film. We're gonna like streamline it." But we had so much fun shooting that. Because it is such a like, I don't know, like metaphorical scene, but it's like also so fun and like, and it's also like the very beginning before like everything is sort of started to like derail and go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of like it really kind of built that sort of chemistry between the two of you, like on screen too. That sort of like that shorthand that couples have,
Yeah.
too, which was kind of nice, and also it
Mhm.
made it again sort of set the scene for what was going to happen. Catherine, maybe a question for you, like the fight scene was really intense. How was it to shoot that? Because that seemed very physically intensive.
Yeah, I mean,
And
well, props to my stunt double who was thrown against a wall.
Yeah.
Like we did the whole scene, like the choking and like everything, but in terms of like that amazing shot where you see like Charlie like literally like flying and
Yeah.
then falling. That was a professional who is trained to do that for a living. And she was so great and such an awesome person. So yeah, I think like that scene, like even like I was watching that shot like right in the other room on the monitor and we were like, yeah, this is gonna look good. And so I think it was just kind of like building this, I don't know, I mean we'd filmed so many like fight scenes in this movie to kind of like build to get to this point where like everything sort of explodes. Yeah, and I think it was just kind of really about like being there for each other and like checking in and choking and like all of this stuff. But yeah,
looking out, checking in.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
are you still alive? Yeah.
Complicated.
Yeah. Complicated. Yeah.
I guess so. I have two more questions. Katie, do you have a question before I chime in with
I
my last?
do. We were talking about this before, and when Sean texted me like, "Oh, I have this horror lesbian film," and not knowing any sort of the backstory, that one, it was made by a woman, because I think this would be completely different if it was made by a man. And it said like, 20 minutes in, I was like, I'm really feeling this movie for so many reasons, besides like the acting and the story and the music and stuff. Like, I think anyone would like this film. You don't have to be in horror, because I don't think it's overly grotesque. And it was super, your relationship was relatable. Did you guys feel that as far as, the film and how it comes across?
Yeah. Do you wanna go first, Kat?
I think that we really felt like this whole time that it was a project that was being run by women.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like when Amelia approached both of us, because we'd both sort of worked with Amelia in certain capacities before, it was like, oh, Amelia's working on this, it's gonna be good. Like, do you know what I mean? There's just like this respect and like of her craft that I really have, like what she's doing in Canadian film and kind of breaking a lot of like genre, like stereotypes and stuff like that. And then to have like Wendy producing, like there's just so many women involved, and especially on set too, like the amount of women that were just in so many crew roles, whether it's like working on camera or makeup, like whatever it is. I just feel like it was like such a supportive space where there were a lot of women, there were a lot of queer people, so it was like it felt like very safe. And I mean, like, that so many sets are very like there's like this hierarchy and it's still very like male driven, and there's still like weird microaggressions that are happening, like even on like progressive sets I've been on, there's still like a ton of stuff that you're like, ooh, that's not good. But I think we were so lucky, like the whole like ambiance of this film behind the scenes was very like women at the front, queer people at the front. And so I think that's really special. And then it's cool to know that that is like visible in the film,
Yeah, it's been really cool for me, because I've done most of the Q&As for the female films, and they've all been women directors and obviously female leads and stuff. And I did, if you guys haven't seen Tuve yet, it's so good, the autobiography. And she's a director, a female DP, AC, set designer, writer. And it's just like, I think it comes across on screen when you have that kind of dynamic on the crew. And it definitely did in this film.
Yeah. And I think that's something that was really important to Wendy, like hiring and like sort of, it comes from the top down of like creating a space, Yeah.
I think that when you have like more female input on a film, like and more female like influences, it just like it deepens everything, like all of the characters it deepens like your connections with each other in a way. It deepens your like relationships that you form with the crew, and there's just like more women involved.
Mhm.
And I think that really happened on this film. And I think especially the fact that it's like an independent production, so it's a smaller cast and crew, like that really lended itself as well. But yeah, there was just this very like you're being like held, you know, all the time. And I really got that feeling all the time when I was on set. It was super special. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then Wendy, I have another question for you. You said in an interview, going back on female empowerment, for me, it's female empowerment story, a fantasy story. And I love that she becomes more powerful and dangerous. Her art becomes more powerful. Can you just talk about more about the female empowerment part of this and her art overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing because actually, because it's the theme, and because I was doing interviews on it, it really made me think about that. And the weird thing for me was I came to a point where I realized just some of the experiences I'd had in my life, that although we made a female empowerment film, that actually I don't think we're there. And that's why I called it a fantasy film.
Mhm.
The empowerment that Gray comes to as a character. And it's interesting because I talked to my daughter about it. Of course, she's a singer-songwriter and works in the music industry. And in the United States alone, she said there were only 3 women music producers. And I was looking on the site the other day where she's one of the writers. She's in the writer section, but the producers, all of them are men. And I think the film industry has come a long way from that. We still have a long way to go to reach.
Mhm.
But you know, the dynamic between Vaughn and Gray was hints that, right? That kind of power dynamic, which is usually held by men. And
Mhm.
so it was just really interesting when I really realized, yeah, we made it. We made a female empowerment film, and Gray became powerful as she became more werewolf. She became more powerful in her art. But really, actually, I don't think we're there in the world yet.
For sure.
No, I would
Super
agree. I would
interesting.
agree with that as well. So, and I think that also that sort of the amount of women that were on this film, that sort of female gaze in many ways is so apparent, especially in a sort of a horror genre as well. It looks a lot different than if a guy made this film, it would be a completely different.
Yeah, we'd be like running through like in bikinis, like
Right. Or not even in bikinis, and you would be like in like some sort of gauze that like kind of flows out, like
but
wet
even like
gauze
the
or
sex
something.
scene, like I know you're
Yeah.
like, we're not gonna talk too much about the sex scene, but even for that, I feel like
Oh yeah, it would have been.
we're never worried that it was gonna be really like gratuitous or like distasteful. I was like,
Yeah.
I think the lighting's gonna be cute. I think we're gonna feel good about this. Like, you know?
Yeah.
It's not that we didn't want to talk about the sex scene, but we didn't want to make that the whole focus, because we all enjoy the sex scene.
Yeah, and I think there's like an extended cut out there somewhere that
Yes.
in the
Blu-ray
vault.
extra.
There definitely is. Yeah.
The director's cut. All right, so my next to last question: what is your favorite horror film, and why?
I can go first. My favorite horror film of all time is Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, I saw that when I was younger, and it just like I'd never been affected by a film like that, and it's stayed with me. I've been Rosemary several years for Halloween. But yeah, I just think too that film, like her character in that film is like it's just so real, and she's obviously just such an amazing actress, but it's like that story is very, very character driven for me, and like that's what kind of affects me. I like movies like that where it's about the person's journey as opposed to just about these like crazy creatures or whatever. But yeah, Rosemary's Baby would be my top, and then I also really just like thrillers, like psychological thrillers, like the Invitation.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Catherine?
Yeah, I also love like kind of something that's like more cerebral and like really gets you thinking. But I do love like the sort of, I mean, we were talking about Mario Bava, like Black Sabbath, also amazing. And kind of like these like decadent like films like giallo, like horror and stuff with like the lighting and everything. And I just rewatched the original Suspiria recently,
So good.
and like that kind of shit really gets me. Like just like this beautiful like decadence of I don't know, it's like beyond just horror. It's like there's so many senses I feel that are like stimulated with that kind of filmmaking. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, the original Suspiria is really great, and actually the remake is pretty good. Like, I hate to see people divided on them because I feel like they're companion pieces in many ways. So,
Mm.
but yeah, Argento is always a favorite because his sort of interiors were kind of amazing. Wendy, do you have a favorite horror film?
Not sure if it's my favorite, but I agree on the Rosemary's Baby, in that it was influential, I guess I'd say. And I think the other film that really had an influence, probably because it was the first horror film I ever saw, and I was quite young, was The Birds. I mean, it's terrifying. I can remember being a kid and like I'd see these I'd be walking to school and there'd be these crows on a wire or something like that. Like it takes something so part of our natural world and make it terrifying. I thought that was amazing. So that film will always haunt me, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, I can't walk by a wire of birds without being creeped out,
Yeah.
and also being like, I'm Tippi Hedren.
Yeah.
So I guess the last question is, so obviously we're in the midst of a pandemic, and I know that's been hard for everybody. How are you coping, and how are you doing in this? And the sort of second part of the question is, what is next for you?
This cat.
Oh my god, I love that you both have cats.
This is
Yeah, they don't care. They always, especially Sean, he'll always have the background. All you see is him go like this, and you don't see the cat. It's so funny.
He's usually not the one who's the one. I have 4 cats, so
Oh my god.
he's usually
One
not
of them was bound to be in this.
Yeah.
Well, they were both. My other one, who's usually the Zoom bomber, was trying really hard, and I was like,
That's the thing about the green screen, is I feel like it blocks out a lot of like what's going on right behind.
Yeah.
Like earlier, Katie just like appeared out of the distance, like into the shot. I was like,
I know.
I forget the question. Sorry.
"Oh, how are you? How have you been doing with the
What's
pandemic?
next?
And then what is
Yes.
next?"
Sorry, I get distracted by animals. I mean, I think like we were saying before we started, like it's kind of been waves for me. Like I've had waves of just not being able to handle it and feeling like I just am losing my mind, and then to waves of like feeling super creative, and thinking, I'm gonna just make the best out of this, or like try to make something good out of this. And I think for me, it's really made me focus in a lot to my friendships and my family more than I ever have. I mean, I think for a lot of people that's the case. It's kind of allowed us to be really introspective and realize, what relationships we really value, and like how we want to develop those or like nurture those going forward. And so kind of on the topic of that, I co-wrote a short film with my friend Karen, who's also a queer actress, and it's about the value of platonic intimacy in the queer community and our chosen families, because we just didn't see that on screen a lot. I mean, you see a lot of classic coming out stories and stuff like that, and we wanted to focus more on just how amazing the friendships that you form with queer people are, and and how special they are. And so I'm shooting that in June, and we're launching a GoFundMe campaign in May. And then I also started a comedy production house, essentially, with my roommate. So we both have big comedy backgrounds, grew up kind of watching Monty Python and kids in the hall. And so we have started kind of creating short comedy sketches, satirical stuff, mockumentary style. And we have a feature mockumentary in the works as well. So yeah.
Nice. Please send them our way.
Definitely.
They're done.
Definitely will.
Catherine, maybe the same question for you.
Yeah. Man, this year has been I was like, are you kidding me? You're gonna take one of my last young hot years and I have to stay inside? Like
You've got plenty of young hot years ahead of you.
Yeah. Hello. Look
So,
who's talking right
just
now.
so yeah, so it's like I mean, obviously the world is in chaos, and I just think right now, like, we're all having to ask like huge fundamental questions about like, what are we doing? Where are we going to do it? Like right before this call happened, my friend called me and was like, there was just a fire in my apartment. Oof. Like where all of my stuff is right. But you know what I mean? We're living in this world where it's like, I don't know, we just don't have the like blankets of security we used to. And so we're sort of like looking at things in like a big picture sense, which can be good, but like wish it hadn't had to be this long, you know?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think I also will say, like, as much as like a lot of like hard stuff has happened this year, I'm lucky that I was able to be like working, and that for the most part, like Canadian film has been really good at keeping us really safe. So I spent most of the year was working on a video game. I was doing like motion capture for Gotham Knights. So I was Batgirl. Nice. So it's just saving lives, you know. But I have some stuff coming out like really soon. So on Amazon Prime, it's an erotic thriller actually called Voyeurs, and I get to play another queer character in that, which is great. And that's going to be out. I don't know if there's a release date, but like soon. Then I think on May 7th, Jupiter's Legacy is coming out on Netflix, and I have a part in that. Another superhero. I know I'm just like so good at saving people.
Based on real life, you know.
Yeah. Also speaking of saving people, we're filming season 2 of Transplant right now, and I play a paramedic in that. So, you know, I was just like saving lives everywhere I go.
Jeez, what can you do?
In terms of like writing and directing and stuff, I also have been I got like funding from the CBC this year to develop like a mockumentary sitcom I've been working on. And then now I'm like talking to different production houses about that, but I'm also pitching this like comedy horror show. So I don't know, it's like some overlap there. Yeah, so like just like lots of stuff sort of coming through the pipeline, I guess. Yeah, but quarantine sucks.
Yeah. Wendy, how about yourself?
Yeah, for sure, the hardest thing I think about COVID has been when it's really locked down and you can't see your family and friends, because I'm a really social person. So that's been really difficult. Like Lowell couldn't come out for Christmas, and you know, just I really just long to go back to whatever normal life is. But we were very on a business level or film production level, we were very lucky in that we shot 2 features back to back, the second of which was Bloodthirsty, and we literally finished filming that film in Edmonton on February 20th. And I flew to Berlin, the Berlin Festival, and when I came back, life changed. And so we were lucky in that we were in post on 2 features plus a POV sort of documentary, which was a little easier, not completely easy, but a little on mental illness, a little easier to do that documentary because of smaller crews during this time period. So for me, work-wise, it was really no different. However, I think now I'm feeling the effect of, we had literally another feature that played in theaters in last October, but I mean, of course, no one was there hardly. 16 cities with an Aboriginal directed film. And then this one is being released April 23rd on, you know, just about every service across North America. But we can't go in theaters. There's not a theater open in Canada, and we're not, you know, and we'd all planned a theatrical release. So that's disappointing to me, because I think there's nothing, well, it's like live festivals, right? There's nothing the same, like there's nothing like it. And so not, you know, just not even to have a premiere where we all get together you know, and you have the red carpet and the actors walk down, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's something where you all come together in that. So, and I have another feature that I'm just holding back, like, but who knows? Like, I could be holding back forever and I can't. So
Right.
that's a disappointing thing, like that on our end, that theaters aren't open, and I just, and festivals aren't live. And I just want to travel and go to festivals again and just be there in person and talk to people, you know, because it's just so amazing.
Well, I hope that there's hope for next year, and we would love to have you all back and come to visit us in Boston, and have drinks.
Would love
Yeah,
it.
we'll come. We have gowns packed. We'll
Yes, come and visit.
You won't be able to get rid of us.
yeah.
That's not a problem to have, to be honest.
Say one other thing, sorry, I forgot to say about the future in terms of what we're working on. I did get some funding to do something. I don't know what it's going to be. It could be a sequel to Bloodthirsty. It could be a series. We're kind of,
Yes.
it's on werewolves, but I'm not sure yet because we haven't written it. It's going to happen. So I'm doing another horror thing, and you know, we have another like Irish Canadian co-production, which is totally been on hold because I can't even scout there, that we've been working on for a number of years, based that I co-wrote with the writer, the author, the novelist, who wrote the book. And so, you know, we have some other dramas kind of in the works and being developed, but something werewolfish.
Yay.
I should also mention that Bleed With Me, the first film I did with Amelia, her first feature, is coming out later this summer too. And if
nice.
you like psychological horror, you're gonna love it.
And rabbits
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And rabbit.
Yeah, and me eating rabbits again for some reason.
A theme,
So,
as
yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Looking forward to all of that, to be honest. And again, thank you all for joining us on
Thanks
this
for having
morning
us.
and
Thank
chatting and unpacking a little bit of Bloodthirsty. Audiences, if you have not seen Bloodthirsty, what are you waiting for? Like, do it. It's running from the 8th of April to the 18th. Go to www.wickedqueer.org to get tickets and full festival information. Wendy, Lauren, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of
Thanks,
fun.
guys.
So,
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for having us.
oh, you're welcome. And come visit in Boston.
We're on our way.
Take care.
Yes.